Welcome to CMHOC's 7th General Debate. I am your host, Speaker Jacob Barron, and here we have with you tonight three of your party leaders. We have Sebastian from the Liberal Party.
Hello.
We have Prime Minister Nutman from the
Good
New
evening,
Democratic
Canada.
Party. And finally, we have Leader of the Opposition Michael Steeves from the United Conservative Party.
Hello.
This debate will follow a similar format to how it was a couple days ago. We'll be having three questions where each of the candidates will be able to give their policy plank for about 2 minutes on that question, followed by a 4-minute crossfire. But we're trying something new as well tonight. After that, each of the party leaders will get to ask each of their fellow party leaders a question. It can be any question they'd like, any question in any topic, although I do reserve the right, if I find it to be deliberately aggressive or irrelevant, I can obviously rule it out. That member will get 2 minutes to respond, followed by a short 3-minute crossfire for them to be able to ask follow-up questions or talk about anything further in that topic. But we will start off with a 2-minute opening statements, starting off with the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, my friends. Tonight, I'm going to be honest with you. We have two paths Canada can go down. Canada can either go to the right. We will see an ineffective climate policy, doomed economics, and limited social reform. Or we can stay with the party that will be able to provide a strong, equal recovery. The party that fights for social justice and universal health care. The party fighting for working Canadians like you and your family. I will be the latter, making the case for the NDP. I will not talk in grandiose, fluffy language. I will talk real and speak directly to you, the Canadian voter. And I hope that tonight you see past the rhetoric and exaggerations and see that this is a program that will fight for you in Ottawa. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Now we will move on to the Leader of the Opposition, Michael Steeves. Michael, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Recent polling shows that many Canadians from all across our great country support the plan put forward by the United Conservatives. And for that, I sincerely thank them. This election is not about who wins and who loses. It is about which plan Canadians will choose as the way to go forward. Which party do they believe in the most to deliver on the promises they made throughout this election campaign. I'm confident that the United Conservatives have the right plan for Canada, a plan that helps all Canadians get through this recession and back to prosperity. And we are ready to get to work to put Canada back on track. Thank you. Merci.
Alrighty, and finally, we will be having Sebastian from the Liberal Party with his opening remarks. Sebastian, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My opening statement this time will be a lot shorter than last debate. Canada, as we all know it, is a country that has been created and has sustained such against great odds by the will of its own people. From the generations that came here across the Atlantic Ocean to the generations of those unceded ancestral lands to which we are residing on to this day, Canadians have dreamed of building together a country that is strong, a country that is just, a country that is proud of everything that it has ever done. For far too many Canadians, we see too many issues that we have to address. From the unemployment rate that is currently pegged at 10%, to the working class Canadians who cannot make ends meet because of the bills that they have to pay constantly and the debt that they have to pay off. This upcoming election on Friday, voters can choose. They can choose the Liberal plan that is progressive and pragmatic and works for all Canadians, because it directly invests into Canadians, and we can move forward together. Or we can choose to go back to the years of unstable leadership with no clear path forward socially, economically, and politically. The Liberals have a plan, and we hope to gain your support in this upcoming election. I look forward to today's debate.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Now we'll be moving on to the question period, starting off with foreign affairs. Question we have for all the priority leaders here: how should Canada react to previously democratic allies slipping into illiberal regimes whilst maintaining our standards of human rights? We'll start off with the leader of the opposition. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for that question. I believe that we need to work with all of our allies around the world, regardless of which government is currently in place in that country. We have an obligation not to only work with that government, but also maintain our relationship with the citizens of that country. Many of them may disagree with the government they have in place currently, but we need to ensure that our relationship stays strong regardless of who is in power, who is in government, and we need to do our best to make sure that we uphold our Canadian values and they are not disrespected on the world stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the Liberal Party. You have exactly 2 minutes.
Thank you. Under a Liberal government, the policy will be simple. The policy will be to stand up for individual human rights, to stand up to what matters on the international stage to Canadians. Authoritarianism and illiberal governments have no place with who we should be dealing with. Those governments, such as China, bring complete disdain to what we as Canadians believe to be fundamental. That means that we must work with our international partners in order to ensure that we are able to send a message that we are united, that we stand up for these individual human rights, because our goal is, as a nation and as in part of our international community, is to protect our citizens, our collective citizens, our international community, and to protect our international commitments and our international interests. Because once you start sliding further and further down the authoritarian train and the authoritarian path, we will see the likes of which have not been since the early 1940s, the early 1930s, which is why we need to have a strong foreign affairs standpoint. We need to have a strong foreign output to ensure that Canadians' interests and international interests are brought to the forefront to all of our decisions.
Alrighty, thank you very much. And I think finally here we will move on to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. I just want to start by saying how much I do agree to some amount with Mr. Onyemobi. You certainly can't have your cake and eat it too. Likewise, you can't say you stand up for human rights and neglect to stand up for those actively fighting human rights. For example, our allies in Turkey, they actively have been fighting against their own people, and they've even fought the people of our allies, injuring people near their embassy in America. So I don't think that we should just sit down and take this. We should be working with our other allies to be able to tell them that no, you can't be a part of a liberal organization, NATO, and fight against human rights. And so, like I said, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And with that, we'll be moving into our crossfire. We've had a little bit of extra time here, given the fact that some of these speeches were a little bit shorter. But you guys will have 5 minutes for crossfire, starting now.
Mr. Nutman, can you just clarify, are you in agreement with Mr. Onyemobi or are you in disagreement? Because it seems as though you say you agree with him, but then you say you can't have your cake and eat it too. Can you clarify your position?
Well, I agree with him to the fact that we need to hold people accountable. Although I'd like to ask you to clarify whether you're willing to work with authoritarian and anti-human rights regimes around the world. Just
I think
because
that
of the
I've
fact
made
that
my
they're our
position
allies?
clear that we're not just working with the governments of those countries, we're working with the people there as well. That also means opposition parties, that also means activists fighting for people's freedoms and human rights. So
You didn't say that. You said you'd work with
I clearly
authoritarian
said
regimes.
I did not say that I will work with authoritarian regimes, and you know that.
to add into the conversation a little bit, the Liberal position is obviously clear, and I'm grateful that it is an agreement up here on this stage that we need to push for NATO to review and reform its membership standards, because in the modern day it is obviously completely not acceptable for an organization to accept and support liberal and authoritarian regimes because they are against the very values to which we agree with, to which we stand for, and to which we advocate on the international stage. So it's not even just NATO that we should be looking towards. We should be looking to bring this towards in the United Nations, our international forum, because we need to promote those same ideals, those same world peace measures, because we need to ensure that not even just Canada, but the whole entire world is prepared to deal with, say, for example, insurgencies, further authoritarian regimes, and to ensure that those organizations and those governments do not have a place within our internationally renowned society.
So, would the two leaders on stage agree with me tonight that it is absolutely ridiculous that Canada doesn't have a seat on the UN Security Council, while many countries that clearly violate many of the human rights and freedoms that people across the Western world enjoy have a seat? Would you agree with me on that?
And I was going to rope that into there, and I thank the leader of the Conservative Party, the leader of the opposition, for bringing that up, because we need to ensure potentially that in the future we need to advocate for those countries that are sitting on the Security Council to be liberal minded, or to be value minded for the international community in a positive way, not slipping into authoritarianism and not slipping into illiberalism, but slipping up and going forward and progressing forward with international human rights, with individual human rights, not destructiveness and not recklessness. So I agree.
Might I jump in there and mention the NDP's record on ending arms trading with human rights abusers like Saudi Arabia, and we've also worked to have human rights respected within NATO. It's all within the NDP's record.
That wasn't the question, Mr. Nutman. The question was, would we support going after?
I'm saying it's absolutely certain that we support
the NDP
this.
platform, saying that the arms deal would go ahead should Saudi Arabia just pull out of Yemen, but supporting other terrorist organizations other than in Yemen seems to be fine for the NDP. That's interesting.
Yeah, nobody said that.
It's in your platform, Mr. Nutman.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the whole thing was in our platform.
I think we should move on.
Alrighty. Well, with that, we can move on to the next topic here, which is, let me just get my timer ready for this, immigration reform. So, as we know, with thousands and hundreds of thousands of new Canadian immigrants arriving in Canada each year, how does your government plan on helping them make life more affordable for themselves? We'll start off with the leader of the Liberal Party. You have 2 minutes.
Well, it's a three-pronged approach that we need to go forward with in regards to immigration. And I'll talk about other things as well before we get to that three-pronged approach. Immigration is what builds our nation as a whole. We need to look into, say, for example, our TRV, our visa program, because when I was working in a constituency assistant office many years ago, that program was flawed, broken, and had so many issues with it that you'd be spinning around all over the place before you realized what was actually going on. We need to reform that temporary residence visa program in order to ensure that people who are wanting to come to Canada and people who are wanting to stay in Canada can have those options to do so while still using this amazing program that just needs to be reformed. We also need to look in regards to our permanent residency requirements, because from what I understand and from what I have been told by those who are within the permanent residency program, you need to be in Canada for a certain amount of time in order to become a permanent resident. Some visas don't count towards that 2 to 3 year period. And so if you say, for example, are if you've been in Canada since 2017, but you've only been in university for 1 or so years, your 2 years that you've been here for don't count, and you need to fix that. You need to ensure that those work visas, and you need to ensure that those student visas are all correct. And so then that goes to the three-pronged approach. Immigrants in the time of crisis are always forgotten. And under a Liberal government, we will ensure that no one in our country is left behind. We also need to ensure that we can work with the provinces, the second prong of this approach, to work with them to ensure that immigrants within their borders, within their provincial borders, are taken care of. We also need to look in regard to health care.
I must apologize. I must apologize. That is your 2 minutes, but you can obviously elaborate more on your platform come the crossfire. But I do apologize to
Not a problem.
the leader of the Liberals. And next up, we will have the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Nutman. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I believe it's absolutely necessary that we shape things in a way to make things less exploitative than temporary foreign worker programs tend to be. Because to be a temporary foreign worker, there's generally less hurdles you have to go through, less evidence you need to put forward that you have somewhere safe to go, you have someone to speak for you, you have a job. Whereas with permanent residency, there is a lot more of those hurdles. And so I'd like to reform these things so that we can make sure that these people coming to our nation to live a better life are in fact living a better life and not a life of exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And we will finish off with the Leader of the Opposition for 2 minutes.
Thank you. As an immigrant myself, I can tell you that Canada has been one of the most welcoming places in the world. And although the immigration system is definitely flawed, as the leader of the Liberal Party has said, it does have a lot of benefits to it. We need to make sure that we are continuing to bring in more skilled workers into the country, especially at a time where we are facing shortages in certain areas of the workforce, where Canadians cannot fill those gaps. We need to ensure that we have the right programs in place.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. We will be moving on now to our crossfire period for 4 minutes, starting now. If the leader of the Liberal Party wants to be able to. Oh.
Sorry. I was having technical difficulties. It appears as though I'm now back.
That's all right. Do you want to finish your time there, or did you get cut off abruptly?
I'll use the wait. Are you?
I'd like to go ahead if possible.
Not a problem.
Did you get? Yeah, if you got cut off there, I'll just give you an extra 30 seconds here to finish up.
I was just going to elaborate on the programs that we do need to work on. Primarily, the sponsorship for grandparents and parents in Canada is flawed, from the standpoint that it takes about 10 to 15 years for applicants to get through the program today. We need to make sure that we do everything that we can to cut those times by a lot, which is why the United Conservatives are pledging $250 million towards increasing resources to immigration officials so we can cut those numbers down. It is absolutely unacceptable that many people who apply for these programs, frankly, do not make it until the day they can actually arrive to Canada. And I believe that as a government, we need to do everything we can.
Thank you, Mr. Steves. And we'll be moving straight into the crossfire section, starting now.
So to finish up essentially what I was saying before, I agree with what everyone is. I think everyone on this stage is in agreement in regard to reforming the immigration system, such as the parents and grandparents sponsorship matters and the temporary residence visa matters, and permanent residency requirements. Those all need to be reformed, and that is why under a Liberal government we will be investing $540 million towards a full overhaul of the immigration program and the immigration departments and different ministries that have the ability to issue those reformations. $540 million, and we will ensure that that gets spent wisely. We also need to ensure that under a government of the day, healthcare for tax-paying individuals within Canada, whether you are here temporarily for a year or so and you've paid taxes or not, healthcare is there for you. If you are paying taxes within our system, our taxation system to the Canada Revenue Agency, you deserve what is expected, and you deserve what is to be given to the same people all across Canada.
Absolutely agree. Currently, the way the system works is that when you show up to Canada as a foreign worker on a visa, you start making money from day one. You start paying taxes from day one. However, it takes about 3 months before you're qualified for healthcare. In those 3 months, you are on your own. If you don't have coverage and you get sick or get into an accident, it is up to you, not your employer, not the country, to help you out. We need to change that.
Absolutely. I think we should totally be looking at less at how many temporary workers we take in, but more about how they are going to be treated and how we can get those who wish to stay on the path to residency and citizenship. And
oh, sorry. Can you keep going on?
sorry, is the time up?
No, not at all. I thought everyone was done there. You can keep going, though, Mr. Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I think we definitely need to be treating people better. I guess that's all.
Alrighty, well, it's good to see good bipartisanship here on this issue here. But with that, we'll be moving on to their last question portion of this, with a question regarding Indigenous relations. Despite the past government's efforts to improve quality of life for First Nations communities, living in them remains unaffordable and there is a lack of economic opportunities. How does your government plan on supporting First Nations communities and increasing opportunities for them? We'll be starting off with the New Democratic Party. Oh, sorry, we're starting off with the Liberal Party. My bad.
Is
it the Liberal Party?
No, it's the NDP.
It should be the NDP. My bad. We'll be starting off with the New Democrats for 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Well, certainly the NDP has a record of helping Indigenous communities with our ending boil water advisories, investing in First Nations healthcare, and in fact, the Cullen budget generally did a lot for First Nations. But I definitely want to go a lot farther than my predecessor. We're going to implement UNDRIP. We're going to push child welfare policies in line with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and a whole slew of other things, from ending RCMP brutality, asking for consent when investing in projects throughout First Nations territory, and even continuing our work on mental health care and combating drug addiction on reservations. And I believe those will all contribute very well to adding more economic opportunities and generally helping the well-being of First Nations communities everywhere. Thank you.
Alrighty, and we'll be moving on next to the Liberal Party. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to recount a story. When I was visiting New Brunswick earlier yesterday, I was there with the Liberal candidate, Mr. Declan Abercrombie, and he was recounting a story of a tribe member, a local tribe member, First Nations band member, that he met and was close with during his days as a youth spending his summers in St. John, New Brunswick. The candidate, Mr. Abercrombie, he looked up to the man, and the man told him stories of the elders, and those were inspiring to his younger self. That's one of the reasons why he chose a career in politics. That's why he chose to help other people. Sadly, that person died of chronic liver disease due to his struggles with alcoholism. We see this across Canada. And I'm sure that everyone agrees that this is not what Canadians deserve, and this is not what Indigenous people within our borders deserve. This is their land. We must assist them. We must help them. We must do everything that we can in our power to increase, say, for example, the mental health and addiction funding. That is why the Liberal Party is proud to say that we will invest $3.75 billion into a joint mental health and addiction program that is to be administered in conjunction with the provinces, because that is what Indigenous people deserve within our borders. The Ministry of Indigenous Affairs say, for example, we need to repair the broken relationship between the government and the individual bands across Canada. It is said that in Halkamalum, in the local language here in British Columbia, it is Klakstel Allah, which means knife handle. That's what the government is called.
Order. I do apologize. Unfortunately, the Liberal leader has gone over his time again.
Again.
You got a lot to say. But we're moving on next to Leader Michael Steves. Michael, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I believe that we need to do a lot more than the previous governments have done. For far too often, all we hear is promises, commitments, spending commitments, but not a lot of action. When it comes to the Ministry of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, we need to reform that ministry. Just because our Constitution tells us to do something, we shouldn't be doing the very bare minimum. Indigenous communities all across the country shouldn't just have a seat at the table, not just a voice at the table, but we need to listen to that voice and deliver on promises that we, as a government, are making, because those communities need our help. We can't just sit idly and say that we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but not deliver on anything. They expect more from us, and a united Conservative government pledges to do more.
Alrighty, awesome. Well, with that, we'll be moving in to our 4-minute crossfire, starting now.
All right. I'll jump in first. Quick on the draw. I'd like to ask the leader of the opposition, Mr. Steves, has your party ever supported putting Indigenous representation into Parliament? You say that you want to listen to Indigenous people, but
I can tell you that we have. The last Conservative government had the Progressive Party as part of their coalition government, and they did make a pledge to deliver on First Nations electoral reform. Unfortunately, that has never happened, but I could say the same thing about the New Democrats. Neither have you delivered on that promise.
then would you work with me in the next term to introduce Indigenous representation?
I'm willing to work with any party, whether I'm in government, in opposition, or in any other place, to make that happen. Yes.
And I think that to kind of rope that all up into one statement, we need to ensure that what we're promising in regards to Indigenous consultation is actually being done. I believe that we need to do this because for far too long, politicians on the left, on the right, and the center, I will be the first to admit that everyone has said that we will listen to the Indigenous peoples of Canada and we will implement their what they are asking for. Well, look around you, ladies and gentlemen. What we see is are different people promising that they will consult with these Indigenous peoples, and they do not. That is why we need to reform their part to ensure that that the broken relationship between the government and the individual bands all across Canada are linked together to ensure that there is pure consultation, that any decision that affects them is consulted on with them.
Have Indigenous peoples ever been consulted before in regards to an energy corridor?
They sure will be, if the United Conservatives form government.
Well, I sure hope so.
And under a Liberal plan, that all of that is put right up to the heart of our platform and in our government, that Indigenous consultations take to the forefront to any decision that we make that affects them or that runs on their land. As well as what we need to do is we need to reform the local Indigenous governments in whatever ways possible that we can, because we need to ensure that the benefit of anything goes towards that local government first, in order to provide a clear voice from the bottom up, in order to ensure that governments can increase funds and bring forward new and improved services that are directly benefited towards those Indigenous bands across Canada.
Would we be willing to give up an energy corridor if First Nation people refuse?
Mr. Nutman, as I have said before, if the decision of the First Nations communities would be to reject such a project, that project would not happen without their full, unequivocal consent. We will not be forcing any pipeline or any other kind of project through a First Nations community, through their land, which they own, without their consent. That is not the right thing to do, and we will not do so.
So you hate pipelines?
See, this is the kind of behavior from the new Democratic leader. He's been exhibiting that throughout the whole campaign. And as this campaign nears, you can clearly tell that he's giving up. He's given up on his supporters. And
No, I'm just a straight shooter here. I'm just trying to be frank with everyone. I'm not trying to introduce any
Mr. Nutman. You're not being
baloney rhetoric that everyone else is.
You're making a mockery of this question. This is a serious question, and you're making a mockery out of it.
So just to state,
well, no, unfortunately with that, I have to say that is your time. It's the first time you guys actually went through a full crossfire, but we used up all our time for that. And that means we will be moving into the new phase of this debate, question period, where members get to ask the leaders questions. We'll be starting off with the New Democrats. You may ask a question to your closest rival right now, the United Conservative Party.
All right. Mr. Steves, when you formed the Reform Party, you talked about the need for strong climate action. Yet as Conservative leader, you've taken steps to work against the New Deal, the Green New Deal, implement an unwanted energy corridor, and support the incredibly flawed theory that natural gas will solve all our emissions problems. May I ask what happened between then and now to change your mind on climate action?
Well, I find it absolutely interesting to hear the leader of the New Democratic Party now talk about climate change and the need to fight against climate change, and yet he decided not to address it completely in the platform. Where's the increase in the carbon tax that Mr. Nathan Cohen promised in the last election? That's not a promise that the New Democrats are making, but it is a promise that the United Conservatives are making. Where is the pledge to reduce foreign oil importations so that we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 6.2%? I don't see the New Democrats advocating for that. The United Conservatives are advocating for that. So, Mr. Nutman, if you would like to speak about environmental plan credibility, I would suggest you read your platform first, then read our platform, and then realize that your platform is going to do absolutely nothing, while our platform will deliver the results Canadians expect.
All right, we can move into crossfire here. If anyone else has anything else to say about this.
I had something I was going to say and then I forgot.
You can say anything else too if you want, Sebastian, and it's open. The floor is open to anybody.
Yeah, I think the nail has been driven inside of the coffin. It is clear the NDP is attacking different parties in regards to their plans, when in reality they should be taking a look at the mirror in order to ensure that they actually have a plan. To address
Colin was Colin, and I am Nutman. I was Prime Minister for 5 days. There's no way I can implement an entire...
Nutman, you were the deputy of the New Democratic Party under Mr. Nathan Cohen. You were a cabinet minister under that government. So for you to say you have no association to that previous government is a lie. You are lying.
Up until becoming leader, I've been a name on paper.
That is.
So are you telling me? Are you telling me that you are? Are you telling me that you are not qualified to be prime minister of this country?
I am absolutely qualified to be prime minister. I'm just saying, in the previous government, I was name on paper. I have a whole wealth of different experiences to draw on, but you can't attack me for Nathan Collins' actions.
Mr. Nutman.
You supported them, therefore you're part of them.
It sounds like our moderator just left. Sorry.
He's back.
I apologize there. That was my bad. Keep going.
Oh.
I don't see any point in going back into the fray of insults.
We sure do, because you did brought up the record of the New Democratic Party under Nathan Cohen. So if we want to talk about previous record, then I suggest that you...
No matter what I say, you'll try to push this false narrative on me and my party.
Mr. Nutman, it is your own words that are saying this. Your own words that you're bringing this forward.
Mr. Nutman, this past week,
okay.
The United Conservatives.
Schoolyard politics right here, folks. Schoolyard politics.
I will finish my point. Because you misled Canadians when you said that we posted an ad which was removed, and I've apologized for it, for saying we used a photo of a plane crash.
You didn't
which,
apologize. You
I
deflected.
Quote, and I quote, "Many people have died, and many are still grieving." You did not take a time to go in and search.
Your member used a picture of a plane crash, a great tragedy. A great tragedy that a lot of people have died in plane crashes. That's what I was referring to.
No. You said
And I know that Canadians will do their due diligence and see that that was my intention.
You are lying to Canadians. This is what you have done, and this is what Canadians are saying. Just look at the polls.
I'm gonna have to jump in here. The crash that in question was something that happened A in 1973. B, no one died and no one was injured, thankfully, in that crash. And the ad, yes, it was insensitive.
Facts don't care about your feelings, Mr. Nutman.
Plane crash images are associated with death.
Order. With that, we will have to move on. That is the utmost of our crossfire period there for that question. Next up is the New Democrats to ask a question to the Liberal Party. Mr. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Onyemobi, your party has accused mine of being far-left radicals, yet we share many policies. For example, we both want to reform the police. We both want to increase spending to get out of the recession. We both want to tax luxury goods. We both want to raise the price on pollution. We both want new transit projects, and we both want social justice. So what makes the NDP radical, not being liberal?
That's quite interesting that you're attacking us for something that is completely of no substance. I think what you should do is take a look at our platform and take a look at your platform. What do you say as of the approximate new budget that you're going to be doing? $26.4 billion in the hole. Well, that's quite interesting because under a Liberal plan, we won't be $26 billion in the hole. We are actually projected to be running a surplus of, if I can actually remember this correctly, around $5 billion. We have a plan, and we have plans that will work for Canadians without putting them in debt. You want to spend without any responsibility and without any accountability. The Liberal Party wants to spend while ensuring that our expenditures and our revenue balance each other out, while at the same time what we are doing is paying off the debt that your government and the Cullen government has put on Canadians, $15.273 billion on the backs of Canadians, to which a Liberal government will, on the first budget that we will be doing, will pay off.
All right, moving into crossfire here. Anyone may go.
All right, Mr. Onyemobi, you once supported a deficit. Why are you now flip-flopping on it in your current platform?
It's called fiscal responsibility. Once you learn how to do math, you realize you can run a surplus while investing into Canadians.
And
quite simple.
And from what I understand is that we had to wait for so long to get some sort of snapshot on the fiscal situation of Canada. Over the last 6 years, you have been running, and your party has been running, and your former leader ran on a budget of surpluses of everything that you were to be doing. And all of a sudden now we see, now that we have a fiscal update, a proper update to ensure it and to inform Canadians on what there is to pay off, of whether we are in a surplus or in a deficit, you spent $15.273 billion. That is an exact number. And you're going to be attacking us on what we say that we will be running a surplus. We costed our platform. We ensured that we got everything forward in order to see that we are going to be working for Canadians. That is called responsibility right there. And we will ensure to have that at the forefront of our political decisions, of our economic decisions, and our social decisions.
Our platform is costed, and we will not hamstring our recovery to a deficit.
Order. Let him finish.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. The NDP will not hamstring our recovery to a surplus. We won't hamstring it to a deficit. We've got to... deficits are known
last election,
to increase public...
And the NDP were in a deficit. We are back into an election cycle. We're back in a recession, and we're still in a deficit.
The best time to have a deficit is in a recession.
Your plan does
We are in a recession.
Your plan does not work.
Well, the Liberal plan that we have here will do exactly what you are trying to tout. We will save and ensure Canadians have a clear way out. The numbers at the end of the day, yes, they say a $5 billion surplus, but that is because we are paying off of the spending that your government and that your predecessor as an NDP, as a member of the New Democratic Party, you guys and your party have done this, and they're forcing us to actually put together a proper platform. That sounds like a government that should be working for the people.
Which is why the United Conservatives made a pledge, unlike the New Democrats, to review the financial statements completely, down to the last cent, to know where the heck did the NDP spend all this money. Because clearly, if we're back in a recession, and the NDP claim they have been spending money on Canadians, then why are we in a recession again?
And that's where
I'm sorry, guys, I have to cut you off there, but that is our time for that. We're moving on to the next question period for the United Conservatives. Let me ask a question first to the Prime Minister.
Thank you. Mr. Nutman, the departure of Nathan Cullen further exposed the incompetence and dysfunction of the New Democrats. You are tanking in the polls. You ran an abysmal embarrassment of that campaign. You do not have a recovery plan for the economy. You do not have a plan to reduce taxes on 90% of Canadians either. You do not have a plan to address climate change, which in fact you're proposed to do even less than your predecessor. Your so-called cost platform offers no specifics other than your labor-like plan to A, end privatization, B, kill the National Energy Board, and C, once again spend recklessly by running another $26 billion deficit. So to get to my question is, what makes you think that your party should ever be trusted to run a government again?
Well, I think that half of that was baloney, and the other half...
That is your record, which is baloney.
Let him
attacks.
answer.
Now, I think that I'm fit to be the next Prime Minister, just as I was the last Prime Minister, because we have a good plan. We have plenty of plans to reverse the deficit. We have reverse the recession, my mistake.
Increase the
and
deficit,
frankly, nothing I say will convince you otherwise. This is just a loaded question.
Is that all the answer you'd like to give for that? We can bring it to Crossfire if you'd like.
Well,
Hello?
I guess
I can't hear you. Technical difficulties, sorry.
That's all right. I just said we'll be moving to Crossfire if you complete your answer there.
Well, I guess if nobody wants to jump in, then
I just want to make sure he's finished his answer there.
I believe he did.
Alrighty, well, we'll move into Mr. Prime Minister.
There we go. I can hear you now. Sorry.
Do you want to finish your thing, or were you finished your answer there?
How much of it did you hear?
All of it until we heard of almost all of it.
Yeah, so nothing I say will convince you otherwise. It's just a loaded question.
Nothing you say would convince Canadians either, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, well, thank you for the schoolyard politics that we so enjoy.
That's all I've been hearing this campaign, Mr. Nutman. I haven't heard anything of substance. Well,
alrighty, well, we are in the Crossfire phase. If anyone else would like to jump in, if there's anything else anyone would like to say on this topic.
Sure. I guess all I've got to say is, for Canadians watching this at home, this is the Prime Minister representing the New Democratic Party who says he's qualified to be the Prime Minister of our country. Well, given listening to that answer of my so-called loaded question, I think many of you would have doubts, which I share them with you as well.
How am I supposed to respond honestly to a question that is so loaded?
It was simply discussing your record. That's all it was.
A very biased view of my record.
Well, according to the recent polling, it's not so biased unless you're going to call Canadians biased as well.
This is less discussion and more attacking. I'm not a fan. Baseless.
Mr. Nutman, if you'd like to discuss your policy, I'm all here. Because clearly, if you can't discuss your policy, it simply does not exist.
All right. Well, unless anyone else has anything else to say,
so I guess
unless someone else has anything else to say, we can move on here. All right. Well, then moving on, we will. Mr. Steves, you have a question you can ask the leader of the Liberal Party now too.
Sure. Mr. Anyamabe, I have a question for you regarding consistency. At the beginning of the campaign, or I should say before the campaign, the Liberals pledged to run a deficit to stop the bickering about who runs a deficit and who runs a surplus, which to my surprise, we haven't had any bickering about that in this election. But neither there or here. I have a question for you about your Liberal tax reform. None of it was mentioned in your platform. It was only mentioned in your leader's tour today. Why are you not telling Canadians?
All right. You have 2 minutes to respond.
I think he cut out.
No. That was my bracket at no cost to Canadians. What are you not telling Canadians? Because clearly tax cuts cost something. So what are you not telling Canadians?
Well, we're not. We are telling Canadians. If you take a look at our platform in regard to the income tax, you can see that the nominal and the marginal tax, the normal marginal tax rate that is usually charged will yield around $273 billion of income tax within a government. This was the same before the Smith government, and this is what we're bringing back right now to ensure that Canadians do not need to spend and pay as much taxes that they have to in the middle of an economic downturn and in the middle of a financial downturn. The government of a day should be able to make these pragmatic fiscal approach doctrines, pragmatic fiscal approach projections in order to ensure that individuals can pay their bills at the end of the day, can see that their revenue, as dwindled as it is from the federal standpoint, because that moved from 273 to 253 in our projections, due to our projected tax cut that we will be doing. Those.
Can I respond to that, or do we have to move to a crossfire?
I think I'm over my time. But
Mr. Moderator?
Oh, I'm sorry. You have 30 seconds left.
Oh, okay. Where was I? I've lost my train of thought.
Not mentioning a tax cut in your platform.
That's what you'll say. So what we are saying is that restarting our economy, we will do what is necessary to stimulate the hard-hit sectors of the Canadian economy. We are going to be spending money, and we're going to be ensuring that all the debt, say for example, that we forgive and the tax break that we give to the low income and middle class Canadians will go right back into and ultimately what we have there as a surplus, and ultimately we start
already. I must say that now your time is up now.
Okay.
So now we'll be moving into the crossfire. You can ask some follow-up questions if you'd like.
So I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Mm-hmm. So listening to your response, Mr. Anyamabe, I guess I could say that it is only the United Conservatives that came out flat out with no nonsense and said, we are cutting the first and second tax brackets by 1.25% at a cost of $8.5 billion to government revenues, and we're cutting corporate taxes from the Nathan Collins 18% to what it should have been 15%, to ensure that businesses can make the investments necessary to create jobs that Canadians need. I'm not understanding why you couldn't tell Canadians that, yes, we are advocating for a tax cut. Here's how much it's going to cost.
Well,
you're willing to do it. You're
look at what we're saying in regard to
in a time of recession. I agree with you. Our plan is exactly the same. We are cutting taxes, and we're going to spend into the economy to make sure we can grow the economy, get out of the recession, and grow jobs. But why not tell Canadians what exactly you're going to do? Why have to do it on the second last day of the campaign?
Well, the second last day of the campaign, let me just remind you that we had 4 days of campaigning. First of which was the campaign kickoff. Second of which we had to suspend our campaign because of a senseless attack that happened in Montreal. And then the third day was where we had to go around and finally send our message across Canada of what we plan on doing.
Something Mr. Nutman did not do, but we'll leave it at that.
Understandable.
Excuse me, I suspended my campaign.
I'm going to finish my thought. Thank you. The Liberal Party in our platform, I believe it was page 5 of our platform, of where we said that we will be committing to a strong economic recovery through the use of tax incentives and additional funding to key government programs, as well as we will be doing what is necessary to stimulate hard-hit sectors of the Canadian economy. This was put forward in our plan. This is what we will be doing. This is the projected fiscal income tax that we will be getting, $253 billion, down from $273 billion of what was projected the last time around. The GST rate stays the same. Other taxes and duties stay the same. The only thing that is changing is tax reform, which goes underneath our program expenses and social reforms. And the tax reform, as well, as I will add on to it, tax reform is actually on our last page, page 30, in expenses, forgiving small business debt, as well as tax reform.
So to follow up on that, in your campaign agenda, it mentions paying off small business federal debt, or I should say clearly, small business federal debt being paid off. Can you elaborate on what exactly that means? Because again, like your tax cut, it's not really clear in your platform what it is exactly that you're going to do. And I think Canadians want that.
So what Canadians should know is that small business, as per what was given by us by Statistics Canada, which is readily available on their SME research and business intelligence portion of the Government of Canada's website, ic.gc.ca, we can see that small businesses owe X amount towards the federal debt, towards federal programs that they need. That
such as GST and corporate tax?
Such as GST and corporate tax.
So you're essentially doing a corporate tax then?
So we are doing a tax cut.
I'd like to make it known that the NDP is the only party pledging not to cut taxes on the 1%.
I am not saying...
Mr. Nutman, 99% of employers in Canada represent small businesses.
And hold on a minute.
You are not...
Unfortunately, we do have to bring this section to a close. I do apologize. I gave you guys an extra minute there of crossfire, however, so you guys had a little bit of extra time. But with that, we will move on to the Liberal Party's questions, starting with the Liberal Party to the United Conservative Party. May I ask your question?
So what we've seen across this entire campaign is bickering back and forth between the Bloc and the Conservatives. The Bloc and the Conservatives. And some shots here, up, down, left, right, and center towards the NDP, but we see Bloc and Conservatives. The Bloc is touting themselves to be the voice of Quebec, that they are the ones to be in Parliament advocating for Quebec policies. Looking at the UCP and their platform, what I see that is missing is anything to do in regard to Quebec, and the Conservatives do not seem to have policies on paper in regards to Quebec. So my question is as follows: how are Conservatives prepared to listen to Quebecers and prepared to enact policies that benefit Quebecers when it's not even in their platform?
Well, to answer that simply, it is in our plan. It is in our plan when you look at our middle class tax cuts. It delivers a tax cut to 6 million Quebecers. When it comes to corporate tax cut, it's going to deliver a tax cut to many businesses across Quebec. We have a plan that addresses Canada. It addresses Quebec as well. The bickering with Mr. Tremblay when it came to the policy of the National Energy Corridor was not a question about disrespecting Quebec. This is about making sure that Quebec gets funding for projects that are going to benefit the province the most. We are a party and will be, as government, should we end up in that position, working with all provinces, including Quebec, on many things, including immigration, We need to make sure that the Canada-Quebec Accord, where grants of over $550 million annually go towards helping Quebec with their immigration program, is adequate. We don't need to say that explicitly. We made a commitment to work with provinces to give them more autonomy when it comes to their immigration policies, which also includes Quebec. Quebec has their own very special immigration program, and we will work with them to make sure that it fits their needs. So to say we do not have any Quebec policies in our platform is quite misleading, Mr. Onyanbe.
If I can go into
Yep,
crossfire now.
we're going into crossfire here. You can talk about extra questions here.
So the question was in regards to social policies, not economic policies. Say, for example, the Liberal Party will be working with our partners in La Francophonie to pursue closer ties with our fellow French-speaking nations, that we will consult with the province of Quebec and others in regards to foreign dealings in the matters relating to Francophone affairs, in the matters relating to provincial powers regarding to Quebec, as well as we will be respecting the need for self-determination and ensuring that on matters of constitutional affairs everywhere, everyone is given an equal say on constitutional matters.
And we have made it very clear during this campaign that we will be working on with Quebec on all of these issues as well.
So will you continue the recognized position of Quebec as having a special relationship and a distinct society within Quebec, within Canada?
As the leader of the United Conservative Party, yes, I would.
Thank you.
I'd like to make it clear that the NDP is other than the Bloc, the only other party pledging to implement the Jérôme Lajoie doctrine, the doctrine that states that Quebec should conduct its own international affairs in relating to their provincial jurisdiction.
So this is actually quite contradictory, because if you look at our platform and what we've been saying, what many people have been saying, that the Liberal Party, that not the NDP and the Bloc are the only people doing it, but the Liberal Party is also doing it. We will be working with our partners in Quebec to pursue closer ties on an international level with our French-speaking nation. So that same doctrine is being followed by the Liberal Party. It's being advocated for by the Liberal Party. And so to say that the Bloc and the NDP are the only ones doing that, my friend, is misleading.
Well, I mean, if you were to...
Sorry, the way you explain it and the way I explained it seem like two different things.
From what I can tell, the NDP platform basically said that the Bloc has a point and they haven't done enough. So in a way, I feel like it is the Bloc Québécois leading the charge to protect Quebecers.
You know, it really seems like the Liberals and the Conservatives are just bullying the NDP and the Bloc Québécois at this point.
This is actually quite funny.
Really our politics.
We're advocating for sound policies, pragmatic
Mr.
policies.
Nutman, I'm pretty sure it has only been the New Democrats throughout this entire campaign accusing the United Conservatives of basically colluding with the Liberal Party. And as far as I'm concerned, the plan that we've put forward addresses all the problems that Canadians are facing. There's no need for any one party to collude with another to gain the support of Canadians. It is unfortunate that you are the only party here today on this stage that has no plan to get Canada out of this recession, that has no plan to get Canadians back to work, and you are once again resorting to these rock bottom
attacks. That's all.
All
in my platform.
Order. Our time is up. Order. Unfortunately, that is all the time for that crossfire. I know that there is...
Mr. Moderator, I believe you're cutting out.
Sorry, hello? I'm back here, sorry about that. With that, we will be moving on to the final question before you guys' closing arguments. The Liberal Party may ask a question to the New Democrats.
Ladies and gentlemen, and there will be a question here. There was something that I believe was passed in the 6th Parliament in the first session by the NDP. It was introduced by a member of the NDP. An act respecting net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I believe that there is an obligation upon the part of the Government of Canada to ensure that Canada's greenhouse gas emissions are reduced to net zero by 2050, and that the Government of Canada must ensure that the public is kept informed of how the government intends to accomplish Section 2, which was the Government of Canada must ensure that Canada's greenhouse gas emissions are reduced to net zero by 2050. Section 4 then says that the the previous clause must be accompanied and accomplished on a regular and timely basis. Well, the last time that I checked, this measure was brought forward in a couple months ago.
I do gotta say, the Liberal leader, he does have to get a question going soon.
The question was coming there. Why, after a Conservative Prime Minister, an NDP Prime Minister, and then now yourself as Prime Minister, 3 successive governments, have there been no update with C6? You are in violation of the law, my friend. Why is there no update on C6?
I'm sorry. My government existed for 5 days, and there was a vonk out on my government. How do you expect a government to put out legislation when no legislation is going through on a vonk?
That is not the...
Now hold on. Crossfire soon. Now, and the environmental minister is no longer in cabinet. He's not even running for the party anymore. He's gone. He's out. And the previous prime minister retired. I can't answer for him. I can only answer for myself. And for myself, I was prime minister for 5 days during a vonk.
Are we now?
Yeah, sorry. You may go into your guys' crossfire if you'd like.
So this is quite interesting because the prime minister was part of that former party, and so now this actually makes more sense. He is ill-equipped to be leader, and that he is saying in the past tense that he was prime minister for 5 days, as well as he was the deputy leader at the time of the NDP. He should have had to known that this policy was brought forward. He voted for it himself. He would have remembered.
I'm not the environmental minister. I am the deputy leader.
You voted for it and you're the prime minister. It doesn't matter if you're prime minister for a second. It doesn't matter if you're a prime minister for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or 300 years. The thing that matters is this, that you must be there to work for Canadians, no matter what the government of the day is. You must be able to hold to account yourselves. And this policy was key to almost bringing down the government of I believe, Adrian Nim, of the government of Mr.
Now look, you expect a report to be well done in 1 second, but
you were part of
it was your vonk. Your vonk to bring down our government.
It was not my vonk, Mr. Nutman. It was a vote of non-confidence that was brought. That was not my vote of non-confidence.
Say once again, the New Democrats are making false accusations.
The New Democrats are saying that this was my vote of non-confidence when on record it has been stated.
And I'd like to make the...
You backed it.
I back it, Mr. Nutman.
One of the NDP members that did not...
Who voted for the vonk.
For Bill C6.
Oh.
Mr. Nutman was one of the NDP members that did not vote for Bill C6.
So he didn't even have the ability to show up.
I've made a mistake. At the time that bill was presented, I was one of the people who voted against it. But when I presented a platform of the United Conservative Party, I've made it clear that we're not going to have an economic plan without a credible, well-constructed environmental plan. That does include an increase to the price of pollution. That does include making commitments as a government to fall under the law of Bill C6, because that is the right thing to do.
So if I
Your denial of not admitting to making mistakes, for not being in the know as deputy of the New Democrats, goes to show once again to Canadians that you simply do not qualify to be the Prime Minister of this country.
And you qualify with your schoolyard politics?
This is not schoolyard politics. This is not schoolyard.
Are you going to insult international leaders too?
Mr. Nutman, once again,
coming from the party of which that's in order for Canada to be truly bilingual.
Okay,
Quebec,
you can't attack me on that.
No. Let me finish my point because I've been cut off this entire time. You are essentially...
Yeah, you cut me off every time too.
You are essentially saying the same thing, that in order that because you are prime...
That is the time. I do apologize. I don't mean to cut off the Liberal leader there, but it is time for us to move on to our closing statements. And with that, we'll be starting off with the leader of the New Democrats for a closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. We've seen this again. We see the schoolyard politics at it again. When Tommy Douglas became premier, he faced these same baseless charges and baseless accusations from both halves of the old establishment. They called him reckless, radical, etc. What we really see here is politics as normal. If you're sick of this old school bullying and mudslinging, then know that you're in good company. If you're sick of the loaded questions, you're in good company. If you're sick of all of this, then it's time to vote for real change with the NDP.
Alrighty, we'll be moving on next to the Leader of the Opposition for his 2-minute closer.
If we've learned anything new today, I could say that once again, the NDP, led by Mr. Nutman, once again proved that his party and him as leader are not fit to lead this country. But this is not this is not about what I think. This is about what Canadians think. They're going to look at all the plans the three leaders brought forward today. They will listen to all the points we've made throughout this campaign. And it will be up to them to make the choice that they will be happy with, a choice that they believe in, a choice that they can get behind. This is what I'm asking Canadians to do. I'm not asking them to support me over the Liberals or me over the NDP. I'm asking them to support whoever they feel most comfortable with, whoever they feel has the best plan going forward. That is the message I have for Canadians tonight.
Alrighty, and we'll move on finally here for the last speech to the Leader of the Liberal Party. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, after two leaders' debates, we can see that there is bickering on all sides to present the best image the best image for a future Canada. Our nation obviously needs change. We need change from the two-party politics of stagnant ideas and dry proposals. Change from the instability of government or the unrelenting drive, say, for example, to power. Change from old politics of the NDP with Nathan Cullen and Mr. Nutman to new solutions that are being brought by the Liberal Party of Canada. This is what we will provide. The Liberal Party is running to change the way that politics has been done for the past decade. We will push for new pragmatic ideas and work with every single party on this stage and every single party that enters Parliament to better Canadians in order to ensure that pragmatic ideas to problems are brought forward for Canadians that are facing economic hardship, financial hardship, social hardship. We will stand for the equality. We will stand for equality. We will stand for freedom. We will stand for Indigenous rights, for Francophone rights, for humanitarian rights, and Canadians' interests abroad. Canadians don't need to pick between the lesser of the two evils anymore. Canadians can now choose a party that will work for them. Avancer ensemble, investing in you. That is the Liberal Party's message. And we hope that this Friday you will vote for it, the progressive, positive message that we have been putting forward during this campaign over the divisiveness of the NDP and of the irresponsibility of the NDP. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, candidates, for showing up to today's debate. It's been a great fun hearing all the points that all the parties have and all the different options that Canadian voters will get to choose. To you watching at home, please make sure you go vote on Monday in the general election. And with that, thank you for watching and have a good night.